Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a region that is a literal crossroads of civilizations. We're talking about the land that makes up modern-day Pakistan. And we aren't just looking at modern history here. We're looking at a massive historical layering of human existence that spans an absolutely incredible 70,000 years. It's this wild story of conquests, shifting climates, cultures colliding and merging, and just incredible human resilience. To really wrap our heads around the stakes of this history, let's look at a pretty staggering number: over 200 million. When Pakistan gained independence back in 1947, its population was roughly 35 million. Today, it has absolutely exploded to over 200 million people. That kind of unbelievable growth makes it one of the most populous and geopolitically significant places on Earth right now. But to truly understand this modern republic, we've got to rewind the clock, all the way back.
Okay, let's dive into the timeline. To make sense of 70,000 years, we've broken this vast history down into a pretty straightforward chronology. We're going to start with the ancient foundations, then move through the empires of the crossroads, the Islamic synthesis, the Mughal Golden Age, before finally unpacking independence and the modern republic. So starting off with Era 1, the ancient foundations, taking us from early humans all the way to the Indus Valley.
All right, so picture this. The earliest modern humans arrived in this region somewhere between 73,000 and 55,000 years ago. And for tens of thousands of years, they were your standard hunter-gatherers. But right around 7000 BC, things shifted. They began settling down, focusing on farming and domesticating animals. And by 4500 BC, this evolution turned into something totally spectacular: the Indus Valley Civilization. These guys stood proudly right alongside ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. They were true pioneers. They developed intricate metallurgy techniques, and get this, they're widely believed to be the very first civilization to use wheeled transport, specifically bullock carts. Throw in their advanced use of boats, and you've got a society that built incredibly successful trade routes linking Central Asia, the subcontinent, and the Orient. But, even the greatest civilizations can fall victim to nature. The beginning of the second millennium BC brought some pretty severe climate change. Persistent droughts just hammered the region, and it forced the population to abandon those grand urban centers and retreat into smaller villages. Now, right around the same time, migrating Indo-Aryan tribes were moving into the area in waves. This kicked off what's known as the Vedic period, which is when the Vedas, the oldest foundational scriptures of Hinduism, were actually composed. The pastoral tribal society of these Indo-Aryans fused deeply with the local traditions, fundamentally altering the region's cultural DNA. And this actually kicks off a theme we're going to see again and again. This land is essentially an eternal sponge of cultures. Moving right along to Era 2, Empires of the Crossroads. This is all about antiquity and a massive clash of conquerors. So, the sheer wealth of the Indus Valley, combined with the fact that these local tribes eventually started infighting, made the region incredibly vulnerable. And as we know about the ancient world, vulnerability attracted superpowers. This place was a prime target. Just look at this chaotic, rapid turnover. In 518 BC, the Persians pushed through the Khyber Pass, bringing their centralized bureaucracy. Then, Alexander the Great swept through, and almost immediately after his sudden death, the Mauryan Empire expanded in, before the Shunga Empire popped up later on. The Indus Valley was literally changing hands at breakneck speed. But you know what's truly fascinating about this era? It's not just the warfare, it's the cultural aftermath. After Alexander's campaigns wrapped up, Greek generals and their communities actually stuck around in the region, establishing the Indo-Greek kingdom. And this wasn't just a military occupation, it was a profound synthesis. Greek and Indian languages, cultures, and artistic traditions all blended together, creating this incredibly rich, unique society that expanded way out into the Punjab region. Following the Greeks, new waves of empires rose and fell, which eventually brings us to the Gupta Empire. Spanning from 320 to 600 AD, this era was a massive cultural golden age. It was during this time that major literary epics like the Mahabharata and Ramayana were fostered. But unfortunately, internal instability and invasions from some really powerful nomadic tribes ultimately brought this golden cultural structure crashing down. This brings us to Era 3, the Islamic synthesis. Let's look at Arab expansion and the Delhi Sultanate. So the 7th century marked a huge turning point for the cultural and religious fabric of the region, sparked by the vast expansion of the Arab caliphates. After taking the Middle East, Arab forces reached the Indus Valley. A general named Muhammad bin Qasim successfully conquered most of the Indus region. But it's important to note this wasn't an overnight change. It was a very gradual conversion. Islam, along with Arabic and Persian languages, began to spread and take deep, deep root over centuries, and this was further solidified by subsequent empires. This influence was really cemented by the Delhi Sultanate. Now, instead of listing off every single ruler here, just consider the sheer longevity of this era. Power was consolidated across 5 distinct dynasties, ruling over huge chunks of India and the Indus Valley. And under their rule, the subcontinent became deeply intertwined with a wider international network that spanned all across Afro-Eurasia. The absolute crucible moment of this era, though, was the intense merging of the existing Indian civilization with the newly dominant Islamic civilization. This synthesis was so profound that it literally spawned an entirely new language, the emergence of Hindi-Urdu. It's just a beautiful example of how layered this region's history truly is. It's constantly absorbing and transforming everything that arrives at its doorstep.
Which leads us perfectly into Era 4, the Mughal Golden Age, a time of serious prosperity, art, and architecture. We're moving into the early modern period now, and it was kicked off by an invasion that completely flipped the nature of warfare in the region. After centuries of devastating attacks from outside forces, the Delhi Sultanate faced a brand new threat. At the First Battle of Panipat, invading forces led by a conqueror named Babur totally crushed the ruling Lodi kingdom. And how did he do it? Well, Babur introduced something revolutionary to the subcontinent: early gunpowder firearms and field artillery. This dramatic military victory marked the spectacular beginning of the mighty Mughal Empire. The Mughals initiated what is undeniably the region's golden age. I mean, their rule brought nearly 2 centuries of peace and massive economic development. They spread the Urdu language far and wide, and they left a legacy of magnificent architecture: masjids, mausoleums, madrasas, and forts that still completely define the landscape of Pakistan today. Cultural arts, especially painting, reached incredible new heights, and it was also during this really vibrant, dynamic era that the religion of Sikhism originated over in the Punjab province. Moving on to Era 5, independence and partition, we're looking at British rule and a divided land. So by the late 18th and early 19th centuries, Mughal power had really started to wane. This power vacuum allowed local dynasties to step up and take control, before they ultimately fell to the British East India Company. Now, Pakistan actually fell under British rule a bit later than other parts of South Asia, and it stayed that way following a series of conflicts. But finally, on the 14th of August, 1947, Pakistan gained independence. To create this new nation, the vast British India provinces of Punjab and Bengal were divided up along religious lines. But this independence came at a truly staggering human cost. Partition triggered one of the largest mass migrations in human history. We're talking millions of people moving across these newly drawn borders. And tragically, this was accompanied by intense violence between Hindus, Sikhs, and Muslims. Almost immediately, geopolitical lines were drawn in blood, as disputes escalated into the very first war over the region of Kashmir, a conflict that defined the new borders and really set the stage for decades to come. And that brings us to our final era, the modern crucible, characterized by political turbulence and a massive population boom. This brand new nation of Pakistan really had to find its footing amid some incredible internal and external pressures. The modern history here has been marked by intense recalibration. In 1956, a new constitution officially declared Pakistan an Islamic republic. Then, in 1965, a major war broke out with India. By 1971, severe economic grievances and political disenfranchisement in East Pakistan escalated into a devastating civil war, which ultimately resulted in the independence of Bangladesh. The political whiplash just kept going right through the 70s, with shifts toward Islamic socialism, military coups, and the imposition of Islamic law. It's an incredibly dense timeline of constant crises, new elections, and rebuilding. And this actually brings us back to the most astounding fact of modern Pakistan. Remember that number from the beginning? Despite the wars, despite the partitions, and despite relentless political instability, the population has absolutely boomed. We're talking from roughly 35 million at independence to 100 million in 1990 to well over 200 million today. The land that once housed those ancient Indus Valley cities is now teeming with one of the youngest and fastest-growing populations on the entire planet. So we've just traced an incredible 70,000 years of history, from early hunter-gatherers and the very first bullock carts all the way to the marching armies of Alexander and Babur.
From the beautiful linguistic synthesis of Hindi Urdu through the trauma of partition to the modern booming Islamic Republic, Pakistan is a true survivor. It's a place where history doesn't just happen, it layers. It acts as an eternal sponge of cultures, creating a complex, vibrant society. Which leaves us with one pretty compelling question to ponder. After 70,000 years of empires, cultural synthesis, and modern conflicts, what is the next chapter for this ancient crossroads? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity to go out and learn even more.